Lucas had an NDE when he was very young. He had 2 cardiac arrests and went to another dimension. Pay close attention to his account. And remember, if you want to share your own experience, contact us via email listed in the description.
My name is Lucas. Today I work with culture, mostly in theater, and my experience happened on September 27, 2005, when I was 19 years old. That's when I had 2 strokes. And at 19, nobody expects to have 2 ischemic strokes, right? Apparently, everything was normal on a typical day. I was happy, cheerful, smiling, and I went to work as usual. My job was a bit stressful, but nothing out of the ordinary. That day, I had a stroke around 6 p.m. As I said, I was feeling fine, and suddenly I started feeling a strong pain in the back of my neck, on the right side of my neck. Since I was at work, I thought, oh, it must be a discomfort, a common headache. But things got worse, and I started feeling the entire right side of my body going numb, and I couldn't control it properly. It was like my limbs, arm and leg, started pulling to one side, to the point where I lost speech. At one point, I lost consciousness at work. I only woke up much later. And I was taken to the emergency room completely unconscious. My co-workers helped me, took me to the entrance, and informed my mother, who was already there when I arrived at the emergency room. Already at the hospital, they did several exams like tomography, electrocardiogram, and others, and they found out that I had had an ischemic stroke, and I was immediately admitted. This stroke happened in a very internal area of the brain. On the left side, a very sensitive area. After 8 hours of hospitalization, things got even worse. I had a second stroke, after feeling strong convulsions followed by a cardiorespiratory arrest, and according to the doctors, this second one was a result of the first one. And at that moment I died clinically. And that's when my experience began. Before this cardiorespiratory arrest, during the moments of unconsciousness, I was completely out, as if in a dreamless sleep. But during the arrest, I woke up completely conscious in the corner of the ICU. I saw my body there, saw all the work of the medical team, saw the doctors and nurses performing resuscitation procedures on my body, saw them taking my mother, who was desperate, out of the ICU. I saw everything in great detail. An interesting fact is that I was so conscious that at that moment I knew I had died. I remember looking at that whole situation and saying, I'm dead. And with a very clear vision, and despite knowing that I was dead, I wasn't terrified. In fact, I had a sensation that when I tell people about it, they even laugh. It's that when I looked at my body, I thought, wow, how ugly our body is. It was as if that body didn't belong to me. And there I was, overcome by a feeling of peace. But it's very difficult to describe this peace. It's something we don't have here on Earth. A different feeling. I also had a feeling of continuity. I was sure it wouldn't end there. Still there in the corner of the ICU, a flash passed in front of me, as if it were a big vortex of white light, and I saw myself being taken suddenly, as if it were a roller coaster drop. That first drop, only in reverse. Instead of falling, I was rising, and all the time with these feelings of positivity. During this journey, I can't say I woke up in a place, because I don't remember blacking out, but I remember opening my eyes in a place. It was a very different place. I'm sure it wasn't anywhere on Earth. I have very solid memories of this place, which sometimes confuses me only regarding time. It's hard to say how long I stayed there in that place. I remember opening my eyes on top of a white platform, about 5 centimeters high. It was on a lawn and there was a person beside me, but I couldn't see their face very well, but I knew who it was. And that was the first moment I understood that there was a full and collective consciousness there, because I couldn't see the face, but I knew who it was. And it was my maternal grandmother who died 15 years before I was born. She said to me, "Calm down, be at peace, everything is fine. I came here to welcome you." I don't remember talking to her, but I remember many things she said to me, like, "You are here now, but you won't stay. You'll only stay here for a little while. Let's talk a bit about how it is here. I'll show you." and all the time the feeling was one of positivity, of expanding the mind, and after all these years, I understand it as if there was no individualism there, only the collective. My grandmother then took me to explore that place. We passed through a kind of forest or park. It was large with very tall trees, and on the left side there was a lake, and people, many people in scattered groups in that field. They wore a kind of all-white robes, all very smiling, talking to each other. My grandmother told me what I was going through. There was something that had to happen because I had chosen it myself, and that there was the true life, that people lived there, and that I had to go back and tell what I had seen. At that moment, I also remember walking and looking under my body and seeing nothing. I didn't see my body, but to me it wasn't strange, and I continued walking with her around the lake. The water was very calm and still. I looked at the sky and there wasn't one. It was all white, a very bright white light. I remember thinking perfectly, wow, how beautiful it is here. There was a moment when we passed by another group, a very large group. There were about 30 people gathered there, sitting on the ground, and one standing, looking like she was lecturing, talking there, with a lot of attention from the people. And when we passed by, she waved to me. Then everyone looked and smiled. At that moment, I felt a lot of good things nurturing and a very strong warmth. Then I remember flashes of places all within this park, of her voice, of seeing how the connection between beings there is until she took me back. We walked around a place full of flowers, many flowers, and she took me back to that platform, that big square. I think it's made of wood in white color. And she said, now you're going back. Everything will be fine. Don't worry, don't be afraid. You'll go back and everything will be fine. But don't forget, this is where we live. Here is where we naturally belong. Go back and speak. One of the things my grandmother said is, everything you're learning here, everything you're seeing, use it for good. Report, tell, and use it for good. She didn't leave any specific messages, and it was only at that moment during the return that I felt a little fear or apprehension, I believe because I didn't want to go back. So I lay down on that platform and felt once again the sensation of the roller coaster, that first drop, very strong, and woke up with a very strong impact. But I woke up much later from my cardiorespiratory arrest. They were about to intubate me, woke up with a bunch of whiteheads over me. I looked up and they, Lucas, are you okay? Lucas, blink, blink. Some days had passed by then, and I believe that when I came back, I wasn't the same as before. I came back with a different worldview, with a much more open mind, that there is something after death and that religion or science doesn't necessarily have to explain it. I lost the fear of dying, and that death is a welcome breath at some point. When I woke up in the ICU, it was very distressing, because I had just had a wonderful experience, and imagined the desire to tell everyone about it, but I couldn't speak. It was at that moment that the doctors informed me that I had had a stroke and I lost my speech completely. I only managed to speak again a few months later. The return to the body was not an easy process. It seemed that the return hurt my body. It hurt a lot. That was already the beginning of the suffering we go through here on earth. It was very difficult to get used to at first. Imagine knowing that there is something like the place I saw and going back to a place where you suffer. Several needle pricks, several exams, without speaking. I wanted to speak, to shout, there is another side, there is another place, but I couldn't. One important thing I can't fail to mention is that while I was unconscious there in the ICU, at the moment I saw my body, I could see and hear everything very clearly. The comments of people, the feeling and despair of my mother, but nothing compares to the consciousness I had while I was in that other place. From there, it was as if I could connect to everyone, not just my mother's feeling, but of friends, their thoughts, and I was much smarter. It's something very difficult to explain.
That was Lucas's NDE. Don't forget to watch the second part of Lucas's account, where he even talks about other forms of life and how his life changed after his return.